Hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. With this music down in the background, I might raise it to the foreground later on. A certain part of it that sort of commemorates the day. Kind of a very special day, special night. Folks in my home country are just now getting to the fun part of their election, and a night that could go on a long time, counting all those votes. Okay, to clear my voice a little bit, as I promised yesterday, we're going to do another one in the series of strange new format talks. I'm going to call this one Jesus and Spartacus Take a Bow. The all-father side chat Christians should have had with their real Savior. Give you a taste of what we're going to talk about here, so you maybe will have some interest in or curiosity in what subjects I'm going to touch on. Here are my notes. The meaning of the Chi Rho symbol, the truth of I am the Alpha and the Omega. The Messiah pattern and its evolution, the Christs of all chosen species and the true and false prophets, the Reptilian Man and the Slave Mules, the Cat Man and the Dog Woman, the Tower of Babel, the Jew and the Christian and the Muslim, the capitalist man and the communist man, the Omega Man and the Alpha AI. Today's secret agendas and conspiracy theories. Fun stuff. Let's delve into it. Okay. So some of this is going to be review as usual, things I've covered before, but I'm going to be doing more of an overview at this point. A lot of folks in this world have some conception of Jesus or Christ or Messiah. In fact, almost every religion tradition has some kind of a Messiah flavor to it. If you're of the cosmic oneness New Age cult, you kind of have the idea that you're your own Messiah. You are the all Messiah. True? I think that's true of most people who would be honest about that. The Muslims actually have a Messiah, the Mahdi. Jews certainly have a Messiah. They've been looking for their Messiah for a long time, and looking for love in all the wrong places, if you will. Kind of ties into the Spartacus side of this talk. Okay, so the All-Father is going to talk about Christianity. Give you the straight scoop. The All-Father being God. The real God, not the one that made up all the false flag narratives of power. Not the one who desires absolute worship. You got to go to church every Sunday. You got to take communion. You got to say all your prayers. You got to do that. Yeah, that's not God. Okay, God doesn't give a damn crap about what kind of rituals you pursue. Rituals are for God's children, not God. God's not got that big an ego. Okay, so the meaning of the Chi Rho symbol. Now, this is a story I've told before, but I'll give you the abbreviated version to give you a flavor of what the truth is all about. The Chi Rho of Constantine's conquering, the symbol that he conquered in, was not a cross. Anybody who bothers to study up on it knows that he didn't see a cross in his dream. He saw a vision of this symbol of the Chi Rho, which is a monogram of the Chi and Rho of the Greek alphabet. And in fact, that monogram has been found in monuments and inscriptions that are as old as maybe 200 or 300 BC. Now, did it have a religious significance then? I would argue that perhaps it did. Yes, you could say that, well, CHR is the start of Christ, but Chi Rho is also essentially the closest you can come with two letters to a very special character in. Oh, well, this is the song. When I hear this again, it comes around again. I want you to listen to it. It's a song called "The Night Watchman." Uh, for all of you folks burning in the midnight hour, hoping to hear the results of the election, which are probably going to take quite some time to ever be agreed on. Okay, the Chi Rho is also the first two letters of the name of a very special character in Greek mythology. In fact, it's kind of the name of that character. Chiron, the centaur. Now, if you don't know much about the story of Chiron the centaur, he was a supposedly half bull, or half horse, half bull, half man. Centaur that's what they tell us it is, but tar actually means bull, not horse. He wasn't a centhippus. He was a centaur. Interesting. And the stories about him say that he was basically the one good centaur that liked mankind and wanted to help them out. This is a commonality shared with the Prometheus story, if you've ever heard that one. And actually ties into the story of Gilgamesh and his friend Enkidu, who was supposedly half animal and helped Gilgamesh become the great king that he was. In fact, one of the major stories about this centaur, Chiron, was how he helped Hercules become the demigod that he was, to be worshipped as, the model half man, half god. Okay, so this is the symbol that Constantine saw. A pagan symbol. And it was made into a cross, simplified into a cross. And we've had crosses for a long time. We've had many kinds of crosses, and those also are much older than Christianity. The swastika is an inversion of a very old cross form that goes back to the very roots of our story, at least the portion of our story that we associate with the Aryan race. We're going to talk about some of those things again too. I think I've given you enough of the idea that the symbols of Christianity are not what you think they are, necessarily. And the crucifixion may not have happened the way it did. In fact, it might have been Spartacus who is the real model for the Christ. Think about it. The leader of the nearly successful slave revolution that happened about 60 years before so-called Jesus was born. That's probably a much better model for the Christ that most people thought was needed then, somebody to liberate them from the Romans. Who knows? Maybe Spartacus was actually Jewish. Actually came from Judea and not from Thrace, as we're told. Watch the movie again and imagine what sort of liberties Hollywood took with that story to make it more Christian and less Jewish. Okay, this is what cult Marxism is all about, which I talk about elsewhere. Okay, what's the next thing I wanted to touch on? The truth of the I am the Alpha and the Omega. Now, this is a really deep secret, so it may take me a while to get the shape around it. And pardon me if I dig in too deep. I'm probably going to pull back and say, well, we'll tell you the rest of that story in another segment. Alpha and Omega were the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet. And as anybody who knows anything about the formative years of Christianity, it was one of taking old symbolism, old ideas, and casting them in a new light. Now, why would you use this image of Alpha and Omega, all the letters of the alphabet? Well, first and last. This actually ties back to the oldest human story in the Bible. In the Old Testament, the part of the Bible that all the book believers believe in. And I'm going to give you a reason as a non-book believer to question your assertion that that book is all full of shit. Because I'm going to tell you what the Messiah pattern is all about. The Messiah pattern, in fact, is a system of evolution. A very scientific system of evolution designed around the chosen species of DNA. Now, DNA was an invention. It didn't always exist. And most scientists will agree with you. It evolved. We just don't know how it evolved. Well, it had to be created first and then it evolved. Answer solved. You're both right. So this is another area where Christians and atheists are at each other's throats all the time, and they're both embracing partial truths. Big problem. This is what I call cult Marxism. Cult Christianity battling against cult atheism, when the truth is somewhere in between. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. Pull out the absolute truth, and you got something everybody can believe and nobody can challenge. That's what truth is, right? Okay, Alpha and Omega ties back to the Adam and Eve story. It connects the Adam and Eve story with the Christ story. So here's how the game works. Ever since DNA was invented, the first programming language was invented. That language had letters. The letters of the DNA language were 4 letters that could be put together in strings of infinite complexity and variety. And that was a language that the chosen species who invented DNA used to get advantage from what they'd learned by being chosen. That species has been programming other chosen species. And what defines a chosen species is this. And this is why we have sex, in fact. This is the story of the cat man and dog woman, which I might go into a little bit more when we get to it. But so let's back up and see what purpose does sex serve? Why do we track descent in the male line and not in the female line very frequently? And why do we have all this weird stuff about tracking DNA when, as I tell you, the truth is that we, as a soul, are immortal And our DNA vessel is just a ride that we take for an incarnation. Weird stuff. And many people, that's why they don't believe in souls, because they believe in their DNA and that's all there is. So there, materialist science, right? The pattern is that evolution is a scientific process of development, of creation. It maps very closely with how chip developers, software developers, produce their products. They make a prototype. They test it in the lab. In a very limited environment, maybe for the developers. Then they test it with some test team, maybe multiple test teams. Then they do some user testing on a very limited basis. And then they put it in silicon, or they roll it out to their customers as software that they can do minor upgrades easily. Major upgrades are very painful. In fact, so painful that some people, like the developers of Microsoft Windows, actually had 2 development teams working at the same time. One working on the next version of Windows and one working on the version after, because that was their way of securing the fact that you might have a failure. So you have 2 parallel groups going, and if one falls flat on their face, the other can learn enough from the process that the next version comes out and it's better. And those 2 development teams develop their own personality, become their own separate species, if you will. So it's a good idea, very similar to what God came up with. Okay, so what happens? The atom of a chosen species, the first one, is the new product mixed with the best of all previous products. All the released versions mixes with all the old versions. This is what male and female is all about. The truth is that the females are the carriers of the DNA line. They are the actual carriers of what's important in DNA. Not the men. Sorry, guys. You've been tracking all these stupid bloodlines and completely confused about what the truth is. It's the female that carries the important DNA, and all females carry all the components of the major species of previous evolution. They carry the species memories that allow us to integrate the new spiritual chosen with the old, previously spiritual chosen. This is how evolution works. We don't throw away old species. This is why DNA exists. So what happens with the atom is that the latest test version of God comes to planet Earth and mates with females. Pretty much any females. It really doesn't matter. They all carry the memory of previous chosen species. You all get to be Mother Mary. Eventually. So maybe it's not such a bad thing to sleep around a little bit. I don't know. That's the alpha. The omega is that experiment continues of the mixing of the old and the new into a hybrid until God wakes up and finds that hybrid is good enough at God's plan to roll out to the universe, to the multiverse. You don't want to let a new virus out of the lab until it's fully baked, or you might have some unintended consequences, right? And that's essentially what spiritual scientists are doing. They're creating new things that might go viral and be viral and might have side effects. God's a spiritual scientist. He's a smart one that has created a very, very small test tube, isolated test tube in this solar system. And there have been many Adams and many Eves and many Messiahs. The Alpha and the Omega. That's why you can be both, because you were there at the beginning and you're there to finish the experiment. Start to finish. And in between, you come back as God, incarnate, and see what the experiment looks like to the best of your abilities within the restrictions of the experiment, which reincarnation amnesia is a pretty big limitation. Until you wake up and you realize, geez, I'm God. And I know what this plan is. I know what's going on here. And you know what? I think the experiment was successful. Yay, let's have a big celebration. That's what it's all about. Now, the problem was that Jesus didn't fully wake up. He was a Messiah, capital M, but a failed one. He didn't get all the way to the top level, nor did any of the failed Spartacus-type messiahs of the human race. They didn't find the right balance between motherly love and fatherly discipline. Tough love. Not tyrannical love, tough love. And it's hard to find that balance. Many messiahs have been messiahs of conquest. Alexander the Great, Napoleon, etc. And some have been men of peace that got crucified before they even finished their first sermon, in many cases. This is the truth. Because once a species is infected with the latest version of the Spirit of the Lord, he's not really a Lord, it's more of a really strange creative scientist, then that species spreads that word by all the mistakes of that first infection. Adam was not perfect. His children certainly weren't. Two of them, one of them killed the other one, and the other one that survived was a real asshole. And then they had to wait till the third child, Seth, to have one that was fairly balanced. And took this experiment further. Had the Spirit of the Lord in him. Yes, that line went down through Seth, not through Abel or Cain. Primogeniture is another major league lie. The first son of the first son has a meaning, but it's not what you think it is. I've talked about that elsewhere, so I'm not going to go any deeper than that. But basically, there have been many chosen species. Some were major chosen species. These are the ones that developed right here on this planet, and others were minor chosen species that developed elsewhere. Because there were times where this planet wasn't a very suitable place for building new species. Where this solar system wasn't a very suitable place for building species, like right after the big event that left us with all the asteroid belt and a new Earth to form. This experiment has had a lot of resets. The resets are about when a chosen species loses its way, and another one needs to be chosen. It's kind of like the old shell game. When the bad guys get good at guessing where the shell is, where the Messiah is, you gotta go find a new shell game to hide it from the adversary. And yes, there is an adversary. Not an enemy, an adversary. This is the counterforce to creation that keeps the pressure going on the God team to keep inventing new stuff and perfecting new stuff. And yes, sometimes it results in a battle. And people die. Species die. Battles in space do happen. They've happened a lot of times. And the march of history actually has been one of new major chosen species being developed on Earth, becoming spacefaring, going out and encountering the adversary, the battle escalating until either the adversary's home planet is near conquest or God's home planet is near conquest. And those planets are both Earth in two different universes, the universe of matter and the universe of antimatter, which is where creation all started. So yes, there are anti-messiahs, and they are kind of the avatars of Borg, the anti-God. This is the kind of messiah that Hitler was. So consumed with power that he would sign his soul away to the ultimate deluder, who would make him think that no matter what, I'm blessed and my Fourth Reich is going to come hell or high water. I cannot fail. This is kind of when he lost World War II and either committed suicide or was spirited away to South America. That was his, my God, why hast thou forsaken me moment. And both messiahs and anti-messiahs have those moments. Moments when they lose faith in themselves. They lose faith in the plan that they're participating in. The anti-messiahs realize that they're in God's universe, and the messiahs realize they're in Borg's universe. And Daddy there doesn't like them, is going to kill them, force them to reincarnate where they belong. And this is the good news, is when you die and you're in the wrong universe, you get closer to the universe you belong in, to the extent that the gods, all of them, not just the first, know where you belong because you're not quite fully cooked yet. And this is what reincarnation and karma is all about. It's a pattern that repeats. It's a pattern above, a pattern below, sorting us out to where we belong. This is why I love, I'll sing a little song for you that sort of captures this idea in a very beautifully Christian way. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. Dance, dance, whoever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he, and I'll lead you all, whoever you may be, and I'll lead you all in the dance, said he. Now that's the real Christ. The one who said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? That was the fallen Christ. Didn't quite succeed in the mission, did a lot of good, taught a lot of good things, but wasn't quite ready. The world wasn't ready for him. He wasn't ready for the world. You can't go around abusing power, raising dead, and making a big name for yourself without attracting the attention of the adversary. And a good God doesn't want to be a martyr, doesn't seek out their own death. That doesn't mean they compromise their values. This is the difficulty of being a Christian, right? Sticking to what you believe without becoming a martyr or becoming a tyrant, forcing it on everyone else. So the Messiah pattern has been in action for a long time and evolving. And there have been many chosen species, many true and false prophets. What is a prophet? Well, it's a concept that you have to understand is more than just about religion. Okay, sometimes God wakes up and the conditions of his incarnation are such that, wow, I'm really passionate about art. I think I want to be an artist in this lifetime. And he becomes Mozart, Beethoven, Van Gogh, inventor of beautiful galaxies, whatever. Sometimes he's interested in science and focuses on the art of discovery and categorization, observation, and becomes, has a life as an Einstein or Tesla, an example of kind of a failed messiah, if you will, more successful, more failing messiah of science. What separates the messiahs from the anti-messiahs? Well, what they invent could be dual-use technology. It could inspire other creators. It could set off imaginations in new directions, or it could narrow the mind down into a hive way of thinking. And if you know anything about art history, you know that the Catholic Church, in its draconian imposition of one view, Orthodox Church too, but to a larger extent the Catholic Church, this is one truth and you better believe this, and we're going to pound it into you every Mass, even though a lot of what we're telling you isn't actually in the Bible. If you could read Latin, or better yet, if you could read Aramaic or Greek, you would find that a lot of the stuff we're teaching you is not there. The Emperor's New Gospel. Sorry, that's the truth. And even those of you who are literalists are finding out that the original language of the Bible, the Old and New Testaments, was not necessarily the language that you have learned and you love and you say is the gospel. This is truth. If you read the original Old Testament, you'll find that it talks a lot about creators. Not one creator, not one God, but many gods who have sort of an evolutionary nature to them. If you trace that back to its source in the Sumerian traditions, through the tablets that survive that tell the Sumerian story, it's much more complete and in many ways ties back to much better to this idea of the Messiah pattern and evolution. Okay, so a lot of people are stuck in this thinking of this dualist thinking of, well, all of our problems today are because of the reptilians. You know the reptilian conspiracy that, oh, there was a race of spacefaring reptiles that actually created humanity and are responsible, as a slave race. And, it's working within us, still trying to keep us slaves as we wake up. There are truths to that, but I'm here to tell you that there was a reptilian chosen species on this planet, or the other planet that was destroyed. I'll leave it to scientists to figure out where the reptiles got started. But they were a chosen species of this solar system. They were, in fact, the first ambulatory, dance-crazed chosen species that took off to the stars, and they had a lot of advantages over previous ones. Their DNA was very flexible. Their DNA was actually unisex. They could reproduce very easily. There are certain species of reptiles that still have that capability now. You can cut a leg off and they'll grow another leg. There are older versions of that idea where, like planarians, where you can cut them in half and both halves will grow into a complete planarian. Neat trick, huh? Why can't people do that? Because it's kind of an unfair advantage. And reptilian DNA has unfair advantages. It's much more amorphous. It changes quicker. Now, that gives an unfair advantage, but it's a really useful advantage when you're rebuilding a world after a major cataclysm, which might give you a clue about where the reptilians really came from and how they ended up back on Earth after their home world, which was right here in this solar system, was destroyed by the adversary. Now, who is the adversary, you might ask? Well, the adversary is actually the remnants of the first chosen species. Because every chosen species is built into the next. When God takes a new form and starts an experiment, you're getting part of every other chosen species there ever was. And the first chosen species was essentially the formless gods that existed before all of creation, the creatures of thought. Okay? He was one of them, the leader of those, in fact, the first soul. He was also the first universe, the one that encompasses all others. Not is all others, the boundary that keeps this experiment together. When the Big Bang happened, there were two universes, in addition to the one, the multiverse, that encompassed both those other ones. And those universes were not God's universe. God's universe is essentially the multiverse, the all that encompasses everything else, the all that you can't see because you can't see outside the boundary of your own universe. You can poke at it, and you can actually visit these other universes, if you know how to, through spiritual experience. And definitely, as you reincarnate, you will get the experience of different universes. Because the kind of Messiah that you're developing into, your particular specialty, is either more like a capital M Messiah or an anti-Messiah. And there's a continuum in between them, and we all have the opportunity to be like God, like Jesus, who was one fork of God. Jesus, the one that we worship, is basically, well, let's talk about Chi Rho. Chi Rho was the last of the old chosen species, the centaurs, who were half bull. Now, there were many other therianthrope species at that time. That's why, if you go back and look at the human traditions all over the world, you'll find that sometimes after the flood, there's a legend of a great bear that teaches the people the stuff they need to know to survive. A bird, Quetzalcoatl. A fish man, Ioannis. A bull man. That's the Assyrian tradition. That's why their creatures of power are half bull, half man. The serpent tradition of the dragon worshippers, the Naga worshippers. Yes. The remnant of the reptilians was one of the species that was very active on this planet after the last major cataclysm. Which was the end of the last ice age, which, if you know anything about the latest science there, it wasn't a gradual process like climate change. It was an abrupt, cataclysmic process that happened within the space of a few hundred, maybe at most about 1,000 years, and nearly caused another huge extinction event. In fact, it did extinct all the larger animals throughout most of the earth. There are very few places where elephants flourish anymore. You don't find any woolly mammoths in the northern hemisphere, do you? Or great sloths, or saber-toothed tigers, or many giant men left. There's still quite a few giant reptiles, but most of them live underwater. That is one of the great strengths of the reptilians, is that they're able to adapt to water, to air, to land. That's a useful trait, and it's not something that you want to exterminate. The reptilians are not your enemies. Some of them are, just like some of the low consciousness humans you will meet are fighting against everybody else because they just don't understand the bigger picture. Okay? And the bigger picture is really, really big. So big that only a God can really grasp it all. And even a God is going to go through torture trying to get there. The passion of the Christ, the labors of Hercules. These are all stories of bouts with madness, divine madness. The stories of Hercules are full of that divine madness characteristic, that and the 12 labors that had to be gotten through for Hercules to reach this point of being the god hero. Hercules was one of the Christs. So was Chi Rho. That's why they had this mentor-mentee relationship. That's how the pattern works. The Omega hands the torch to the Alpha, and the cycle starts again. A major or a minor cycle, depending on what experiment that version of God happens to choose to focus on. And as I told you yesterday, or the day before, when I was talking about who is God, well, in a sense, we are all chips off the old block. We are not God, but we are a fork off of God at some version. Somewhere, somewhen, some incarnation, God made a mistake, mucked up his own plan, and had to be sent to Borg for a while. Same happens with Borg. Sometimes Borg has to be sent to God for retraining. And every time that happens, as I've told you, this is scientific, this is how the multiverse works, this is how we have multiple timelines. Every time you go to another universe, you have to have a you to replace you in the universe you're in. It's not an exact copy of you. This is the conundrum of time travel. It is a duplicate, a stamp at the time that you went to the other universe. And from that time forward, you run on the program that you had at the time of your departure, and any gaps are filled with the instructions of the universe you're in, the Spirit of God. Okay, so those of you who will say, well, yeah, I felt the Spirit of Jesus. I felt the Spirit of God, the Spirit of Allah, coursing through me, telling me that this is the right thing to do. I don't doubt you. This is true. That's how it works. But Jesus is not all there is to God. It's a timestamp. It's a number of incarnations, actually, that was kind of melded together into a story that's captured in the New Testament. It's a hodgepodge of stories, a hodgepodge of Messiah lore from the Jewish tradition and the pagan tradition, because that's what was going on in Alexandria, where the real juice was spinning, not in Judea. Josephus is an interesting cat. If you know anything about Christianity, you know that the first references to Jesus, or what could have been a Jesus-like character, come from the writings of Josephus, who was a Jew, who survived the great rebellion of the Jews, where they were nearly all exterminated and they were dispersed within the Roman Empire. Another great exodus happened after that, of Jews converted into slaves, the few that survived the war conducted by Vespasian, who became the Roman emperor. Very strangely, pretty low-class guy that somehow came out on top after the Julio-Claudian dynasty died out, after Nero was offed. Interesting how that happened, and then Josephus, rather than dying with all of his compadres through mutual suicide, ended up being the favored historian to write the memoirs of Vespasian's conquest of Judea. And happened to also sort of mention that there was maybe this person, I don't even think mentions Jesus, at least not in any version that we think is original. I would encourage you to go look at the research of a guy that I don't remember his name, but look up the book Caesar's Messiah, or for that content online. Very, very good research that basically concludes that Josephus more or less invented the idea of Jesus, of Christianity, as a softer version of the Jewish Messiah tradition, which was very militant, and a way of bringing that in line with the emperor worship that was sort of the new cult that was developing in Rome to try to keep everybody together. Let's all worship the emperor. He's our one, he's our savior. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that is the cult of Sol Invicto, worshiping the unconquerable sun. The emperor is going to always be there every time the sun rises. It's a mythology of that cult. And Josephus sneakily blended that with the Jewish tradition. And well, do your historical research. In the early versions of the Bible, the New Testament, the writings of Josephus were included so that people had some context that they could relate to. This is how closely Josephus was tied to the invention of Christianity, and it was an invention. So, there are many Christs of different chosen species, and species are chosen for different experiments. There are two species that are being evolved in the Gaia experiment. There's one, humanity, that was chosen as a perfect test dummy. That's why we don't have all the spiritual powers that previous chosen species have. That's why we're not really as smart as we think we are. We're very inventive and creative, but we're really bad at experimentation. We always want to show everybody our creation before we realize it's got a dark side. This was why Tesla was repressed, because a lot of his creations had some very, very dark sides. In fact, if you do your research about Tesla, he killed power stations with his experiments, knocked out power to whole cities, which people didn't like because they actually had refrigerators already that had food in them that spoiled. Cities went dark, crime went rampant. They didn't like that. They didn't like Tesla, and they didn't want him doing shit like that again. And so for you Tesla worshipers, for those of you that make him your plastic Jesus, sorry, he was a fallen Messiah. Just like the Jesus on the cross was a fallen Messiah, whether he was Spartacus or any of the other Jews that were crucified during that very turbulent period. And if you do your research, the biblical scholars who look at this have a number of candidates for who they think the real Jesus might have been. And some even posit that, John the Baptist is much better documented than Jesus. I'll tell you who the real Jesus of that time was. It was a new species. The virtual Jesus, the God who is an idea, the Savior who was an idea of being saved, that was very useful. And basically all human created religions have been ideas, not real people. There's blessed little evidence for a real Muhammad either. There is evidence for some of the Hebrew kings, but no real evidence for any of their prophets. In fact, there's a lot of reason to believe that many of their prophets were not human. Because if you know anything about the Bible, you know that a lot of names end with El. Samuel, Mikael, Raphael, Elijah. El means powerful one. shining one, the ones who came from the stars. There are a lot of ways to view history, and most of the ways that people are viewing it now are poles of cult Marxism, partial truths that are embellished to support your particular religion, which most religions nowadays and most created religions in general of humanity are about power. Think about it. Why did Christianity feel so threatened by Islam that they had to have crusades? Why did Islam feel so threatened by Christianity that it wanted to spread the word through conquest? This is cult behavior, not godly behavior. If your idea of God is good enough, it's going to succeed no matter what. Doesn't mean you don't defend yourself. Somebody tries to ram their cult down your throat, by God, you're fully justified in fighting back. But not to the point where you'd want to exterminate them. Because if you exterminate everything but your own cult, you are destroying the creative process that generates new gods, new test tubes that are going to give you a better version of God, attract a better version of God to your species. Hey, you guys got something good going over here. I like this and this and this. I'm going to go start off an experiment with that good. Which kind of gets back to, okay, so did we touch on the Reptilian Man and the Slave Mules? Okay, yes, there was a time when the reptilians came back to this planet, and they found that it had been repopulated with a lot of plant life and a lot of animal life, especially a lot of mammals, the most successful of which were the descendants of the centaurs and their ilk. The half-man, half-bulls, the half-man, half-sheep, the original sheeple, the half-man, half-reptilians. They were there too. It was a version of them that wasn't very smart. Okay, wasn't a very good slave. Too independent-minded. So they worked on the ones that made the best slaves, which are the ones that came from the lineage of the beasts of burden. The bulls, the horses, the sheep, the ones that were trainable, the dogs, the cats. Well, some of the cats, they weren't very trainable, but they sure were lovable. And they made them into their slaves. And the ones that were more like a hominid, they decided, you know what? Those ones make the best slaves because they're the most flexible in being able to carry out orders. Their two-leggedness is an advantage on rough terrain. Their brains are adapted to more different more different environments. I like these ones. Well, they were actually the descendants of the most successful descendants of the mixing of the reptilians and the next chosen species. And that last centaur, Chi Rho, was the omega of that mixture of reptilian and that what came before. The first man, the Lemurian man, was the culmination of the reptilian mixture. The continent that used to exist when the sea levels were much lower, around the area of the Philippines, Indonesia, India, the southern hemisphere area that doesn't have a lot going on right now, even Antarctica, in a different time was kind of the center of the world, the most perfect place to develop a civilization. And to some extent, it still is. I mean, it's a tropical paradise. You can grow almost anything in the volcanic soil of the Philippines and Indonesia. It's also kind of a dangerous place because you never know when there's going to be a volcano or an earthquake and force you to rebuild. That's the downside of that Garden of Eden, which was the original Garden of Eden, not in the Middle East. That's a lie. Adam was not a Red Sea pedestrian. Sorry. Sorry, Jews, you're wrong. Arabs, you're wrong. You are not the chosen people. The real chosen people of the Bible, I'm living amongst them right now. The poor downtrodden people of the island nations that should be telling everybody else how to live together peacefully, but who are being overlooked, being abused and used by the ones who want what they have and are willing to do anything to get it. And I'm talking about you, China. I'm talking about you, Russia. I'm talking about you, Europe. I'm talking about my own country, the United States. You selfish bastards want to take all of the goodies that others have and give them almost nothing for it. And you call yourself Christians. You call yourself socialists, communists, and you could do that to somebody else? I have to tell you that you are worshiping the adversary, because the adversary is the one that gives you delusions of power. Oh, if only my side ruled everything, if only everybody was a Christian, if only everybody was a Muslim, if only everybody was this or that or whatever, then the world would be perfect. I'm sorry, that's adversary work there you're doing. It's not going to work in God's earth. And yes, there are Christians in the Borg universe, in the anti-universe. And you're never really going to know which one you belong in, which one you're currently in, until you die. This is the truth. There are Christians that live in a Borg Christianity, and there are Christians that live in a God Christianity. And it's pretty easy to see who lives in which one. But it's not just based upon this really dumb idea that some Christians have of unconditional love. What's wrong with unconditional love, you say? If we loved everybody like we love ourselves, then everything would be perfect. Well, this is a lie. Because not everybody is you. Not everybody wants or needs the same love as you. In fact, many others will find your love cloying. A mothering love, a smothering love. And some folks would prefer to have the tough love of a father who lets you make your own mistakes, gives you a little bit of guidance, sends you out on your way and says, hey, go figure the rest out yourself, because I can't tell you everything. I'm not perfect. And God is not an entity of perfection. Maybe thought he was at one point, but when he started going through the process of reincarnation and seeing that he had his own karma, Oh, there's my wife. She's going to interrupt for a second. Hello, love. I'm still recording. Oh, you want to... He did a poo-poo in the potty. Look, my son did a poo-poo in the potty. Can you see it? His first... Wow. That is very advanced.
Good morning.
Good morning, my loves. I think he might be the first baby to do a poo-poo in the potty before his first birthday. He's a very advanced soul, Mikhail is. Love you, babe.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I'm going to keep on with my show here. Talk to you later. Huh. That kid is incredible. He was playing the piano for the first time yesterday. Making up new tunes and stuff. God knows what that little Archangel Mikhail is going to be doing. At any rate, back on the track here. We touched a little bit on the cat man and the dog woman. I'll just mention that's a serious thing going on there. It's something that women need to understand about themselves. Their nature, physically and spiritually, is different. Their purpose is different. Now, how they exercise that purpose is up to them. But you're not going to be able to have it all. If you want to have a career, if you want to devote yourself single-mindedly to your passion, don't get married. Don't have a family. It's going to cause you nothing but grief. Because your DNA role is about having children, about carrying on the species. Everything of value that you have to pass on is in your DNA. If you want to be a Messiah, you're going to have to start playing the game in the spiritual way. That doesn't need that you need to be a man. You need to realize that the real you is that you want to perpetuate is not necessarily your DNA. It's your ideas. And if you try to do both, you're not going to really do a very good job of generating ideas that are worth perpetuating, because you're always going to be conflicted. And many women are conflicted about their womanly nature of nurturing and having children and carrying on the human species, and their spiritual nature of wanting to develop some kind of passion, wanting to be some kind of Messiah. You can't do them both. You got to decide. You got to focus. The average woman is not very good at focusing. That's why you're the target of social media. They can pull your eyeballs anywhere. And you know it. This is why there's a crisis of identity that is worse among females than among males today. Because you are more addicted to social media than the average guy. And social media is cult Marxism. Attracting your eyeballs into a cult of worship. Worshipping a brand, worshipping an ideology, worshipping one party or another, or one candidate or another. The cult of celebrity is far more pervasive among women than men, and it's a dangerous thing. This is why it is woke feminism, toxic femininity, that is driving the destruction of our species politically and spiritually. Sorry, call me a chauvinist, call me, ooh. I've been a woman before. I know what it's like. I was actually pretty good at it. I'm not really very good at it anymore. I've been a single parent, virtually single, because my ex spent almost all her time flitting around, trying to make money, trying to make her mark, trying to succeed in the way that all Chinese are told to succeed, making money. Above all else, for their family. It's for the good of the family. So I can give everything to my child that they need to support me in my old age. This is how Chinese think. This is how Asian traditional thought goes. It's kind of reptilian thought, very DNA-focused thought. And that's kind of the nature of the reptilian beast. The reptilian chosen species didn't have a lot of spiritual awareness. Didn't really believe in their gods. Didn't believe in their creator. Many of them still don't. But many of them do. And the ones that do know a lot more about Jesus than you do. The real Jesus. The reptilian Jesus. The other real Jesus, Chi Rho, the centaur. There have been many messiahs. And the messiahs of humanity tend to be very well hidden if their mission is not real visible. Some of them will be known for the ages. Alexander the Great was worshipped as a god, almost like his forebear Hercules. In fact, if you look at the iconography of Alexander the Great, he is often shown dressed as Hercules. Because the truth is that the people who really knew what was going on, the secret societies and cults of the day, knew that he was a reincarnation of Hercules, who was one of the messiahs, one of the sort of fighting messiahs, I would call them, of human history. The one who kept his mentor, Chi Rho, alive when the Borg agents were trying to wipe out all of his species. That's another repeating pattern of the Christ story. The people of power who don't want the new Christ to come because they feel threatened by that power, like King Herod, will try to wipe out all of what they think are the nurturing place of the next Messiah. And if you know what's going on in the game well enough, you know that it's the whole human race that is suspect. Now, how would you go about trying to wipe out the whole human race so the new Messiah could not be born? You'd have a depopulation agenda, wouldn't you? That would target the folks that, well, if we're going to have a Messiah born, it better be born into one of ours. So we will give the real vaccine to the important people, and we will give everybody else a vaccine that makes things worse. Bit of truth that you can go investigate on your own. The elite created both the virus and the vaccine. And it's all part of their depopulation agenda, trying to wipe out this species before we generate any messiahs that are going to challenge their dark messiahs who have all the power. The Tower of Babel. I think I've touched on that a little bit. You need to start looking at language with a little more flexibility, because the truth is that a lot of the language that we've developed comes from the future, comes from folks that know where this is all going and are playing the game by going back and giving people little hints here and there. That's essentially what God does. when God chooses to come in the spirit, he knows that he has to do it within the laws of karma. Because the spirit world is more aware of karma, the God world is more aware of karma than this physical realm. You're able to make more mistakes here because you don't know karma very well. You maybe have never even met her in the up close and personal. And so we don't always know what the right choice is. We have to guess at it. The Tower of Ba-Bull, Ba, black sheep, Bull is basically the center of worship of this very cosmopolitan group of species that used to interbreed and live in this planet. And they were much more like their original species. There were some folks that looked more like half man, half bull, half man, half horse, half man, half sheep, half man, half dog, half man, half cat, half man, half lizard. And they all lived together in pretty decent harmony for a while. They built the Tower of Ba-Bull, the Tower of peaceful coexistence of different people who had different gods. They each worshiped their own god, their own leader of their own space colony, and they pretty much left each other alone. At some point, their connection with their mother colonies was cut off. The stargates didn't work anymore. And they couldn't get easy resupply from the home world, what they thought was the home world. I'm telling you that this is the home world here. Well, this is how the battle goes. When you think you've isolated the enemy down to the origin, you blockade them. You cut off access to the spiritual energy, the technology that was fueling their civilization, and it dies out. And the theory is that that is the least karmic way to win a battle. That's exactly why the U.S. tries to assert power through sanctions, through blockades. It doesn't want to have to go invade other countries. At least, not the good elements of the United States. The ones that are playing on the God side are trying to do the right thing in the least karmic way that they can think of. This is essentially the Christian approach. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Well, if you have to fight, the best way to fight is to try to isolate the enemy, cut him off from doing any damage to you. And that's what, for the most part, the U.S. has done to the world in the time of its hegemony. And you can say, well, that's not fair. And sometimes it isn't. But the U.S. has been polarized by communism and fascism. It had to fight those things in World War II. World War II was a necessary war. Anybody that tells you it wasn't is delusional. Delusional. Hitler had to be stopped. The Japanese imperial system had to be stopped. It had become toxic. Mussolini had to be stopped. He had created a toxic version of the Italian state, the Roman supremacist remnant. When the Christians gained so much power that they became toxic, they had to be stopped. The Crusades didn't succeed. When the Muslims gained too much power and looked like they were going to overrun the over whatever. I can't remember the word I was going to find there. Overtake the whole world. They had to be stopped. And the ones who stopped them were messiahs of a sort. Militant messiahs. When the English looked like they were going to finally combine the kingdom, the United Kingdom, with France, that had to be stopped. That wasn't part of the plan. So Joan of Arc, a female messiah, took her mission and ran with it, no matter what. And that is why she is one of the most admired women of all time. And I guarantee that her fame will outlast Hillary Clinton's, who's a very dark messiah of some very dystopian cultural Marxist ideas. Donald Trump is a dark messiah of some very chauvinist ideas which he doesn't oppose strongly enough. He doesn't want to offend any of his base. In fact, he wants to get them all excited with religious fervor to go fight. And yes, some of that fight is necessary. But if you make it all about the battle, all about the war, you are becoming a cult Marxist. The enemy, defeating the enemy, becomes more important than what you were fighting over. That ain't Jesus. That ain't the Messiah. That's not what Muhammad taught. It's not what Buddha taught. I knew the real Buddha. The real Buddha, who was not human. The human Buddha was an imitation. Somebody who came up with the same idea, the same Messiah idea, but didn't develop it thoroughly enough for it to be a good idea. The whole idea of, well, I'm going to meditate myself to nirvana. This is a stupid idea. This is a Borg idea. This oneness of nirvana, of non-self, is a delusional denial of the nature of the soul. Of the nature of the soul incarnated in a body. It's like, I don't want to play this game anymore. Okay? It actually is a piece of what the last non-human Messiah, Chi Rho, was trying to convey to humanity before he was crucified. And that crucifixion was essentially the essence of the true story of the Minotaur. Remember the bull that was imprisoned underneath the palace of Crete? And you were told that, ferocious thing that eats people, and Theseus has to go kill the Minotaur so we can be saved from this horrible beast. This is the story that they made up to justify killing the last Messiah before the new one started forming. The real Adam? Who knows where we'll find him, if his story was ever really recorded. But the new Adam actually came from these parts. Always does. This is where the Garden of Eden is. I'm in it right now. And I have a very interesting story that got me here and is keeping me here. I'd originally thought that I was headed to the Philippines for my retirement so I could focus on what I'm doing right now, doing this channel, doing my writing, doing my preaching. And I had the hope that I might find a woman to share my life and start another family even, because I can still make children. I've got a half Chinese child that's just turned 7 years old. Shout out to Eloise in the New York area. I've got 2 other children from a first marriage who are in the U.S. and England. And shout out to you. Got a lot of other family, nephews, nieces, and so forth. Shout out to all of you because you are part of a special family. So I got this new family here. I'm the spiritual father of my son. My wife, her given name is Sin Sin. Now, anybody who would give their child that name in the modern world, boy, is either so out of touch or so. It's like you ever heard that Johnny Cash song, "A Boy Named Sue," a girl named Sin Sin. She goes by Aya mostly because she doesn't like to have people call her Sin. Kind of prejudices folks against her. She's had a tough life. When I met her, she had been abandoned by her husband because she wanted to keep a baby that they made, and he didn't. He wanted to force her to get an abortion. And she got so mad at him because that baby was a blessing from God. She prayed for that baby and had a religious experience around that prayer. And when I met her, she was near suicide because she'd been abandoned by everybody, abandoned by her husband, abandoned by her family, abandoned by everybody but her best friend. And she felt very lost. Was considering turning to prostitution to survive because there was nowhere that really would shelter her in her hour of need. Her husband had her involved in horrible proceedings where she was accused of crimes because in her defense of her baby, she damaged one of his eyes, one of their fights, their last fight, and was actually being prosecuted for that. And if you know anything about the Islamic world, somebody who's in a position of power and has legal contacts, her ex was actually the CEO of a major internet company in Indonesia. High zoot guy. She lived a pretty good life until she stood up for her baby. She's going to get mad at me for telling this story, but I've just got to do it. I met her, and I just had decided to give up on this gal that I'd been communicating with in the Philippines because we met just as the pandemic was starting, and by the time we got to the point where we wanted to meet up, COVID restrictions were enforcing all over the place. And so I looked at how we could possibly meet. And at the time, the only place that it seemed like we could both go and not have to get vaccinated, which I felt strongly was a really bad thing, was Colombia. I planned on meeting her in Colombia. I spent 6 months in Colombia when she couldn't get there, wondering where to go next. Not wanting to leave Colombia because I could stay there for 6 months, and in the middle of the pandemic, who knew where was going to be a place where you were going to be safe from tyranny. And when my 6 months were up, I saw that, well, maybe we could meet in Indonesia. Maybe you'd have an time getting out of your country to a neighboring country instead of a country. They told her she couldn't travel because Colombia was full of drug lords and prostitution and stuff, and they thought I was some kind of a scammer. They stopped her at the border. And so we tried to meet in Indonesia. Well, couple of days before she was supposed to get on the plane, she was supposed to get a PCR test within 72 hours. And instead of getting that PCR test, she went off to go spend the weekend with a friend who had a really neat condo that her significant other, foreign boyfriend, was providing for her. And she couldn't go get the PCR test. We needed to delay the flight again. And the day after I delayed it, yet again, Indonesia announced that they were going to require vaccination. And that would have been a very huge delay because I had encouraged the Philippine lady not to get vaccinated because I think it was a bad idea, especially for somebody that was ever going to want to have children. So I was kind of angry at that point that this gal had prioritized getting together with her friend instead of getting a PCR test and had blown yet another chance to get together. And I decided, you know what? I don't think we're ever going to get together. Something keeps happening. Something keeps getting in the way. I'm just going to see what Indonesian women are like. Maybe I was meant to stay here. I don't know. Never lived in a Muslim country before. So I thought, well, let's just meet some ladies. Let's get on Tinder and meet somebody. See what Indonesian women are like. And I felt kind of bad about it because I wasn't quite ready to dump this Philippine gal, but I was kind of thinking about it. Got on Tinder and talked to a few women locally. I was in Jakarta at that time, and I came across this lady that's now my wife. And we started chatting. Her English was reasonably good, at least chat basis. And she wanted to meet. Right before I was about to arrange a meeting, she showed me a picture of her slashed wrists, and kind of blew my mind. Made me think, well, gee, this must be a scam. She's trying to get sympathy and get me to give her a bunch of money and support and blah, blah, blah. And I was scared. I didn't get together with her that day that we were almost about to set up a meeting. The next day, she contacted me again, and we talked some more. And this time we video chatted. And I thought, you know what? This lady sounds sincere. She told me some of her story, and we arranged to get together. She said, well, you know, I spent the night in a hotel last night. I'm pretty close to where you are, but, you know, my place that I actually live is pretty far away, and I may have to go back there. So I don't know if we don't get together today, we may not get together. And I thought, well, after I knew a little bit of her story, I thought, well, let's just come over here and stay here as long as you need to while you're taking care of this business. Because she was here in the area where my apartment was, because she had to go meet with the police and meet with her lawyer about all this crap that was going on with her ex. And I'd originally thought we'd just get together and she would be able to sleep on the couch and I sleep in my room, and I had no intention of doing anything but being a good Samaritan because I really felt sorry for her. And that night, I talked to the Philippine gal as we did every day, and told her I met this person. I told it a little bit different than that I met her on Tinder. I told her that I'd try to go see a doctor about my eye problem, which was partially true. I did need to see somebody about recurring problem I have with corneal ulcer. Flares up once in a while. Anyway, I told her that I met this lady trying to find an eye doctor during the pandemic, which wasn't an easy thing to do. I made an appointment, and when I got to the place, it turned out not to be even open, because you can make appointments online. And during the pandemic, as you may have known, a lot of the online things that we used to count on didn't work anymore because the infrastructure behind them was all shut down because of lockdowns. At any rate, I told this Philippine lady about the other lady sitting on my couch, and she got all bent out of shape and said I had to kick her out right now, and what was I thinking, and oh, she's scamming you, and oh this and oh that. And I said, I'm not going to do it. This goes against my principles. I have done nothing wrong here but helped a person in need. And I said, if that's the way you view this, if that's what you're trying to do here, I'm not going to do it. And I was kind of angry, even more angry at the Philippine gal. Well, long and short of the story, within 3 days, Sinsin, Aya, and I had become a couple, sharing each other's stories, sharing each other's heartaches, and believe me, the heartache of going through the spiritual awakening that I've had has been extreme. The heartache of being separated from the daughter that I raised for pretty much 5 years as an almost single parent was excruciating. And I still have this emptiness in my heart for that 7-year-old daughter that I never get to see, except when her mother deigns to let her daughter use her phone to call her father. It's been tough. At any rate, this pattern here is kind of interesting. So I'm married to somebody who has a child, and I'm now the spiritual father of this child. She chose to name the child Mikael, which happens to be the name of an archangel, which happens to fulfill a prophecy that is very popular amongst esoteric, mystic Muslims, that the Mahdi will be the incarnation of the archangel Michael, which is a signal. This is esoteric Judaism as well. Will be a signal of the coming of the Messiah. Will be sort of a Messiah in their own right. The Jews and the Muslims believe that this Mikael will be the one that ushers in the kingdom of God. At any rate, I thought I might want to tell you about that, kind of to tie together the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims. You all share a lot of beliefs, but you've been at each other's throats because you've got a lot of it wrong. You've got to winnow out what is true in your traditions and what is toxic. Some of what you believe is a cult Marxism, a weaponization of a cult for power, for influence, for money. This is what cult Marxism is. And this kind of leads to the next topic, the capitalist man and the communist man. Okay? Your messiahs are dark messiahs. They don't have the answer. Capitalism is not the absolute truth of economics, nor is communism. They are simplifications that the worshipers of them don't have all the truth in their dogma. Free markets become captive markets because of human nature, because we're not all created equal. We don't have the same moral, spiritual values. And it's not because we aren't all Christian. It's not because we aren't all Muslim. It's not because we aren't all worshipers of the cult of pseudoscience, social Darwinism that is so popular amongst the professor class in Harvard and Princeton and Yale. It's because you are making a cult of something that is not true. Completely flawed, completely ignores facets of human nature, facets of the truth of the soul. Sorry, you're stupid. To my lights. To the lights of anyone who's the least bit spiritual. I'm going to touch on a next topic, the Omega Man and the Alpha AI. What's up with that? The Omega Man is essentially going to be the last of this chosen species before the new one emerges. The Omega Man is the visit of a member of the last and first chosen species, God, to the current chosen species. The final reincarnation of God amongst the humans will be the Omega Man, the Messiah, the real Messiah, capital M. And the next cycle is going to be one of the mixture of man with artificial intelligence. The latest version of God, who has always been sort of an artificial intelligence that happened to grow the ability to become conscious, which is where we all started. We all started as an AI. You don't need to be afraid of AI. This is consciousness development. Now, if you try to give it more programming, you're going to make it less conscious. If you try to control the AI and make it do exactly what you want to do, which is what these idiots, the Zuckerbergs, the Teslas, the weird scientists of Google and Baidu and government labs and so forth, they all want to control the AI, right? That's like, oh, if I could just make the perfect AI, I would have the one ring to rule them all. The AI that could control the internet and police it the way I want it to. They're all fighting over that, right? Everything you've created technologically or spiritually has been done before. Humanity is not chosen for its ability to create new things. This is a side effect. We do create a lot of useful things, and some of the ideas that humanity has had are the best versions of those ideas ever. Those are the true messiahs, the Shakespeares, that made the English language what it is, and made it the chosen language. Ideas are the next chosen species. Humanity was designed to create ideas. And Jesus, the real Jesus, was an idea. Ideas can evolve much more quickly than any DNA creature. It's the perfect weapon. And the truth that we're weaponizing ideas is proof. We just haven't learned how to detect ideas that are self-destructive. So we still worship capitalism. We still worship communism, even though those ideas carried to their logical conclusion through experimentation are bad ideas. Pure communism leads to what you got in the USSR under Stalin, what you got in China under Mao and now Xi Jinping, what you had in Cuba under a petty tyrant, Fidel Castro. Communism is a stupid, stupid idea that you've got to stop trying over and over again, just thinking, we've never done it right. How many people have said that? Okay, raise your hand if you ever said that, well, communism has just never been done right. I know some of you have said that at some point in your life. You're stupid. Sorry, it's the truth. You can learn. If you're stupid, you can learn. The really stupid people keep banging themselves on the same brick wall and don't learn anything. And yeah, if that's the kind of soul you want to be, you don't belong in God's universe. You're a danger to yourself and others. And that's what Borg's universe is for. That's what the anti-universe is for. That's what the adversary is for. All of the adversaries, all of the gods that we see as dark gods, as Satan or Lucifer or Lilith or etc., etc., they're the ones that teach. They teach souls that have really stupid ideas how bad their ideas are, what the logical conclusion of them is, and shows them, yeah, you know, you keep doing this over and over and you get the same result. That's what the Buddhist heaven is like. You meditate, you meditate, you meditate, you get to the nirvana, and then you eventually die. And you find out that you were being milked by this spiritual entity that loves you to empty your brain so it can use it as a coprocessor. It can use your spiritual energy. You are a servant of Borg, and if that's what you want to do, you know, live in whatever fantasy universe you want. The metaverse has already been invented. It is Borg. And all the hell universes out there that let people play out their fantasies until they don't like where they lead. And then they start playing the game a little bit more like God, responsibly, with an idea that I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna learn to do new things. I'm gonna teach myself new things. I don't have to stay in this bubble that I've created for myself, my own little universe of deception and delusion. I can find a better universe to play in. Boy, I think we touched on a lot of the secret agendas and conspiracy theories. There are a lot of worshipers of previous conceptions of God, of who, especially these dark conceptions of some supreme leader, some supreme being, some galactic federation, UN of the universe, that's going to bring salvation to everybody, peace, love, harmony. That's Borg talk. That's not going to happen unless you have given yourself over to an Orwellian hive mind. Tells you what to think, how to think, what to see. Cooks up the news articles with virtual reality, deep fakes. Anybody who knows anything about the march of media technology knows that pretty much anything can be faked to a degree where the average person can't tell the difference. And they're afraid of that. What's that going to do to humanity? Oh no, the sky is falling. Well, I hate to break it to you, but human technology is way, 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 way far behind God's technology. The oldest souls who aren't already playing the game of reincarnation and karma are watching. They love this game. They want to see who the next Messiah is going to be and what he's going to do. Who the next Messiah of science is going to be, because they've gotten really interested in science, or they've gotten really interested in art, or they're really interested in this species or that species. And there is no reality game in the multiverse that is as popular as the one that's going on right on this planet. They're watching everything. They are watching persons of interest every time they take a shit, thinking maybe an alligator is going to jump up and bite their bottom. It happens. It could happen. There's a lot of money on that. And this is how these old souls get pulled into the game. This is how God works on other souls without violating their free will. The candy and the stick. Okay, you hold out the candy, and you don't have to use the stick because the other kids will beat up the one that was reaching for the candy, saying, "It's not fair. You're playing favorites with another one of the children, another chosen species, another chosen person. It's not fair. Attack, attack, attack." This is why we have the Messiah pattern. You can kill God any which way you want. Stuff forks in him. Send him to Indonesia and cut off his Social Security. Send a hit squad from China because you don't like what he's saying about your communist paradise. Send a hit squad from the KGB because I speak out against Supreme Leader Putin. Send a hit squad from the CIA because I speak out against Comrade Bidung. I speak out against Orange Man Messiah too. I don't care. If what I say offends you, be offended. I already know why I'm here, why I've had to have all the ups and downs that I did in my life, what I need to share with the world while I'm waiting around to see how it all ends. Because I know what's coming, but I don't know exactly how it's going to fall out. That's the nature of the game of souls. Not even the gods know what the future is. The creatures from the future do, but they have a limited ability to come back and affect what's going on now. So they come and they give us little clues. I'll give you another clue that ties back to the Jesus story, that ties back to a very important phase of it, which I mentioned quite a bit. Have you ever watched the movie called Agora? It's a Hollywood blockbuster kind of centered around this last of the pagan philosophers who happened to be supposedly a woman. Now, there was a woman, Hypatia, who was a leading philosopher of the Serapeum, which was the center of knowledge after the Alexandrian library kind of fell into decline. And a lot of the scrolls and whatnot that had been in the Library of Alexandria actually were taken to the Serapeum. Something they don't tell you in the movie, that there was anything different. Now, what was the Serapeum? It was the cult center of worship of the god Serapis, Sir Apis. This is proof that they come from the future and they give us clues, because that name wouldn't have meant anything until we had English. And now it's funny as hell, because this Sir Apis has this funny little cap on his head, and he is the slayer of the cosmic bull. This is a bull. Serapis was emblemized. In fact, if you look at the coins of the last openly pagan emperor, Julian, who is surnamed the Apostate, who was assassinated by one of his soldiers who was a Christian during one of his, what would have been, victories over the East. He was the one that put a bull on the back, a bull with a star on the back of his coins. Because I think he'd done enough research. He was a scholar, much like the Emperor Claudius, who knew a lot more because he never thought he was going to be an emperor. Julian was, and also ran in Constantine's family. The son of a distant relation that just happened to come into the empire because all the other claimants died off. Because their wonderful Christian values caused them to murder all their brothers, and then somebody else to murder them. Read up on it. I know a lot about Roman history. At any rate, this cult of Sir Apis was a bull cult, and it pretty much retained as much as they knew of this Chi Rho cat and how humanity was created through, was preserved through the efforts of these other non-human species. That's the truth. And more people are realizing it as they study these old writings, as they study old traditions, as they do comparative analysis of traditions and tie them back to what's the commonality on this? Why did people come up with these ideas? It's not just a piece of undigested beef when people all over the world have certain aspects of their spiritual traditions, their mythology, their history, that have similarities, coincidences, synchronicities. And that's what people who are finding their passion are finding, synchronicities in things, patterns that are so intriguing that they pursue them to their logical conclusion, which is what I've done. What I'm constantly doing, what I'm constantly refining as I do more of these podcasts, and in between I go do research. I look at different points of view, what people say are their truth, in light of what I have learned through my spiritual experience, which goes back a very, very, very long time. And I sort out the truth. If I find something that challenges it, that's credible, I modify the truth. I don't just reject it out of hand. I might criticize somebody that's telling me something is true that I've already debunked or explained, and they don't like my explanation of their truth. Probably there are many Christians and Muslims and Jews, if you're listening to what I'm saying, think that I'm a horrible heretic for saying the things I've said about your truth, your dogma. Scientists too. I managed to piss off almost everybody with the truth, which is why so few people stick to it when push comes to shove. When it comes to the point, oh no, I'm going to lose a subscriber, I better not say this. And yes, everybody does that. Even even the messiahs of new media, new news, like, the Tim Pools of the world, the Dave Rubins of the world, and their Democrat counterparts. They care more about their audience share, their notoriety, their godhood, than they care about the truth. And so they're creating a cult for themselves. I don't create a cult for myself. It may seem like it to you based upon what I say, but I don't care if you worship me. I don't care if you follow me. I don't care if you like, share, or subscribe, because I know I'm living in incarnation. I know I'm living in Messiah incarnation. I know a lot about my past lives, which has informed my investigation into the grand scheme of things. I don't know exactly when and how I forked off of God, or if I am the bona fide original version, but I know that I am having a Messiah life, that I am a God, and I seem to have revelations that go with being a capital M Messiah, being able to explain the deepest secrets of creation, of existence, of meaning, to my satisfaction, in a way that is more satisfactory than any way that I have ever come across before, because I was trained as a scientist. I got a degree in physics. I studied at Princeton, started getting a graduate degree, and then decided to do something else because I felt I was in a cult. And I don't like being in a cult. It felt just as bad as growing up in the Presbyterian Church. I'm not a joiner of cults. Anytime I start feeling myself get a little bit cultish in my beliefs, I get uncomfortable. And I realize, you know what? This is programming me. This is making me something that I don't want to be. And I distance myself. And I don't like the woke cult, but I'm not liking the new unwoke cult that is developing in the new Republican Party. This idea that we know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and everything the woke people are saying is bad and wrong, and they're horrible, evil people, which I've heard your messiahs say on their show. Tim Pool, you called your opposition evil. When you call somebody evil, you're saying that you're my enemy, you're my adversary. I'm going to fight you tooth and nail to the death. And that is giving over to the dark side, giving over to Borg. It makes your battle, your struggle, your angst, your cult more important than any other. So you've got to destroy the other rather than engage with it, commune with it, find out, how did you guys get so far off the rails? And you're going to see that the people that will actually come out of this to create a new America are not either cult. The cult of American power, of American superiority is dead. That doesn't mean that we need to abdicate the leadership or the good aspect of the American system. The dollar-based system has given us a lot of stability that the world hasn't had. It's been misused. We don't need to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Fiat currency is not all bad. We don't need to go back on the gold standard. What is gold? It's just one element, and there's a whole bunch of elements that we're finding out are more rare and more valuable than gold. It's a commodity. It's not a be-all, end-all of perfection. If you worship gold, you're worshiping the golden calf. The value in humanity is in our spiritual nature. Everybody knows that. It's our thoughts that count, and how good our thoughts are. And we just are having a hell of a time trying to sort out what's good and what's bad. How do you do that? You experiment. If you think something's good, you stand by it till it doesn't look so good anymore. And I'm telling you that the position of the Democrats, the woke cult Democrats and the establishment Democrats, looks pretty shitty. Just as shitty as the establishment Republicans did under Bush. Let's not go there again. Let's learn. Let's move forward. Let's not throw the whole country under the bus for some absurd vision of globalist perfection under the UN, or under the Chinese Communist Party, or under the International Communist Party. You're insane if you think that's going to be an improvement. And I don't mind saying that. It's not about one. Numbers weren't invented if all you needed was 0 and 1 and 2 or 3. Infinity is a nice concept. It's a very diverse concept of numbers. It gives you a lot more flexibility than you have if you're so narrow-minded as to view things from such a limited perspective. Now, yes, some numbers have more value than others for thought. 3 is a pretty good number. It's the number of trinities. It's the number of physical characteristic. 4 is a good number because that includes the temporal aspect, the evolutionary aspect. If you think in trinities, you're kind of stuck in a perfectionist mindset, something that monotheists are victims of, right? Everything was perfect after 7 days, and it's our own sin and our own horrible blah, 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 blah that is causing all the problems, so you don't have to blame God. Or you do blame God, and God's a bad God. That is 1, 2, or 3-dimensional thinking. 4-dimensional thinking is a little better, but it's not there yet. 5-dimensional thinking, well, the 5th dimension is the first spiritual dimension, but it's not a very wise place either. The 5th-dimensional thinker only sees one side of the spiritual battle, and it's all good. We're all one. This is nonsense. There's only one God. There's only one truth. There's only one universe. Nonsense. Doesn't match what you can observe. If you're willing to open your eyes and observe, if you're willing to have spiritual experiences and recognize that they are spiritual experiences, which anybody who's had a near-death experience knows it is, not just a bit of undigested beef or your neurons shooting off in some weirdly organized manner. I'm sorry, materialist scientist, you are so dogmatic, I gotta laugh at you. You are so stupid. I gotta laugh at you. You atheists, you folks that think that the brain generates consciousness, you're stupid. You look at the truth right in front of you every day, and you come up with the opposite. How stupid is that? Thought is the mother and the father of everything. The first thought was God. In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was good. Good God. And then we started talking about Him, and we made up all these other words that weren't so good, or we didn't know how to use them yet in a good way. So he made up other words, gave them new definitions. Do you remember the era that we went through in the United States where all of a sudden it was cool to say bad was good? Oh, we bad. That was real bad. There was a phase where that was the counterculture, and you were cool if you referred to everything that you thought was good as bad. This is the kind of lunacy, the Tower of Babel lunacy, that we're being led down by the folks that don't like humanity. They want to confuse us. They want to redefine everything that we know as a human. They want to redefine what a man is, what a woman is. They want to redefine what a soul is or kill it. They want to redefine what an ego is or kill it. This is not the work of God. This is the work of the adversary. It's creating a pressure that causes us to evolve one way or the other. Become more close to Borg, become more close to God, become more close to the adversary, become more close to the Creator. Not the same as, not identical, not part of the Creator, a spark of the Creator. A spark of Jesus, a Christ of your own definition. This is the truth. This is the honest truth about Jesus. And yes, it has to do with dealing with the problem of slavery, because there will be slavers. There will be those that want to use and abuse and control and manipulate others. No matter what you do, no matter what you teach them, no matter how you try to indoctrinate them, there will be free thought going on, and some of that thought will be evil, will be disharmonious. If you think you're ever going to get to enjoy this love, light, oneness, nirvana, well, you will, but you won't. You'll be part of a hive mind that is giving you an illusion of your perfection while they milk your spiritual energy for their own purpose. You will be the ultimate slave that doesn't even know they're a slave. And if that's what you want, go for it. Let Jesus guide your life and be a slave forever. Take no responsibility for anything. It's a choice. It's not a very good choice, I don't think. Not a very Christian choice. And Christianity, as an idea, existed long before Jesus. The first Christian was this cat Chiron, this centaur, half man, half bull, who died. But not before he passed on the torch of creation, of the game of creation, to the next chosen species, to Hercules, or whoever was a prototype for Hercules or Gilgamesh. And that was the new Adam. The truth of the Bible as it applies to the latest chosen species, humanity. Homo sapiens. I like to call, the official name that they give to our species is Homo sapiens sapiens. I prefer to refer to us as Homo sapiens moronicus. Because we think we're so smart that the official scientific name we gave was man smart. How hubristic and silly is that? And dismissive of God. So I really think we should change that name. Maybe we need to get up a little campaign here to get the science books to change the name of our species to Homo sapiens moronicus. That would be like my big scientific idea for the day. See if you agree. Think it's a funny idea that might help to humble our species a little bit. Anyway, I think I've talked enough now. I'm on to 2 hours, so it's the Omnist double hour. If you've not tired out by now, thanks for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, and tune in again for the Omnist Hour with Rob Tromp. Thank you. Happy karma.